Ready when you are.
We're live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very strange experience. Welcome to the Sterts online AGM, listening to myself in the corner. So, my name's Alison Fenn, I'm Chair of Trustees. We have our accountant, Graham Roberts, with us. Peter is also going to be speaking. Claire Fishley, our treasurer, is also here. Ruth Wilkes is kindly manning all of the IT for us. Jamie and Colin are actually the true IT whizzes who are behind everything. And Perry is kindly taking notes for us. So, sorry, and we have an interloper. We have a single member in the corner of the room. So, first and foremost, could we have a fanfare, please? I'm delighted to announce something that some of you will have picked up on already today, which is that Sterts volunteers were awarded the Queen's Award for voluntary service today. This is great recognition for all the Purple Perils, and really a huge tribute to everything everybody does for Sterts. I think somebody has described it as the MBE for voluntary organisations. So please, everybody, give yourselves a clap on the back. Well done. As you'll see from the next slide, there are a lot of lovely people who help at Sterts doing all sorts of work. We've had a lovely congratulation letter from the Lord Lieutenant. I have to say it's handwriting that only Steve Jeffries would be able to read. There is to come a signed certificate from Her Majesty the Queen. That will be presented by the Lord Lieutenant in due course. A crystal award, yay! More crystal to polish, with the insignia on it, and there will also be, that will come along with the certificate. And then last but by no means least, there's an invitation for 2 of our volunteers to attend a Royal Garden party in May 2021. Names will be put into the biggest hat we can find in the costume store, and picked out of that in due course. Obviously, the presentation ceremony and the big shindig that will go with that will be postponed until further notice. So, we now need to get on to the real business, and again, we have to go through the minutes of the last meeting. They were put onto the website. We have had no comments back from anyone to say that there was any issues on them. Just as a very quick reminder, we talked about concessionary tickets. Graham kindly did a report last year. We did a quick run through on re-election of trustees. Peter did his report for 2018. We proposed a constitutional change regarding trustee longevity, how long we would be in post, and that was passed. And I just talked a bit about some of the strategic direction. That was pretty much it. There were no specific actions taken, and therefore, unless anybody has any objections, which you can object by either via the YouTube site or, if necessary, email Peter overnight. But otherwise, these will be signed off as a true record of last year's AGM. All right. So, matters arising, I'll come to later because it's talking about the item that we asked you to vote on. So, for the time being, I think I will ask Graham to give us a short and pithy overview of the accounts for 2019. And please do recall, even though we're in May, this is all about the last calendar year to December 2019. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, Ali. As Ali said, I'm Graham Roberts. I'm from Blackwell Bait, and we do the independent examination of the accounts. And I'm pleased to say there's no reasons for us not to sign off the accounts. Claire and the team have done congratulations as well to the volunteers. That's really good news. That's impressive. The first thing I'd like to say is, the accounts, the turnover is down on the year. Some of the donations are slightly down on where they were the previous year, but bearing in mind 2018 were up massively from 2017. These are still a very good set of accounts. Hopefully you can all see the numbers, or you've downloaded the financial statements online. So the donations are down slightly. There was £55,000 of incoming grants with regards to the shearing gang from the Arts Council and Cornwall County Council. In terms of the charitable activities, that relates to the box office, and again it was down slightly by about 5,000 on 2018, but again another very good year. Finally, the other activities, which consists of things like the feed-in tariff from the solar panels, DVD sales, and numerous other lines of revenue, such as your catering, your bar kiosk. It's down slightly on the previous year, but a lot of that will relate to the fact the box office income was down. But overall, a very good year, £250,000 worth of revenue, or income, sorry. Expenses are in line with the previous year, up slightly, but less than £1,000. So again, very good in terms of controlling the costs. There's a small loss for the year, but again, there are sufficient reserves, so there's nothing to be concerned about. We're still left with reserves of 338,000. That's down slightly from 353,000, but again, there's enough reserves there to continue for at least another year. And as independent examiners, we look forward just for the next year. The balance sheet, like I've said, is relatively strong. There's cash in the bank, which is all good news. Overall, a fantastic set of accounts, really. The only problem, we look at 2019, 2020, as you all know, is a very different year. But I've been in discussions now, and the entire board have been looking at things to manage the coronavirus issues that all businesses and charities are facing. And I think with the work that they're doing and the things that they're looking into, the charity's in relatively safe hands, and we're happy to sign off the accounts because there's sufficient reserves there to last beyond the next year. That's the end of my report. If anybody's got any questions.
Yep.
Yes, a question from Upton Cross
Oh.
on YouTube. Says Graham, what is the current balance due on the long-term liabilities or mortgage, please?
The current balance is
Okay, just bear with me. So what is the...
25.
It's 25,000. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, just need to repeat the question because the...
Have you not got a microphone? Sorry, I didn't realise. Okay, so one of the questions we've had from the YouTube channel is what's the long-term liability? That's shown on the balance sheet within creditors more than 1 year of 24,600. And if you go to the notes to the account and you're looking at note, I'm just trying to find it there, note 12, it's around about 25,000 including interest, the additional interest.
Okay, no other questions? Right.
No problem at all, thank you.
Appreciate that, and thank you for in the interesting times as well. So, interestingly, Graham and Claire and I did have a conversation about going forward and making sure that we are a going concern, and it was actually very interesting that Graham picked up on a lot of things that we'd already actually made us feel a little bit more comfortable. So, okay, just a quick statement regarding the trustees' election and re-election. Under normal circumstances, some of our trustees would be now. However, because of the situation we're in, COVID-19, and also because of the item that we're coming to later regarding the incorporated charity, all trustees have currently agreed to either stay on or be seconded, co-opted, generally be here for us, as well as being trustees for the new incorporated charity. So please, a big vote of thanks to all of the trustees. I know some of them were due to stand down, but thanks to all of them for sticking with us for the short term. We will come to the matter of the incorporated charity shortly. No questions coming up on that?
It seems like there's a little bit of delay on the YouTube channel.
Right.
So just a response to Graham again saying, so the NatWest loan is 25,000.
You can type back yes.
That's Juliana.
Yes, yeah, right. Okie dokie. So I'm going to hand over to Peter for Peter to do the report on 2019.
Thank you, Ali. I'm going to stand up for mine. I'm going to imagine there's a sea of people in front of me, and it's a packed AGM. This is a report for the annual general meeting for the period January 2019 to January 2020. I've attended Sterts AGM since 2002. They have been argumentative, noisy, rambunctious meetings, packed meetings and half-empty meetings. There have been 9 occasions when I have stood before the AGM and delivered my report, but never in circumstances like this. An online meeting with only a few other people in the room is a novelty. It's not a funny one, but it is a new experience. We were looking forward to one of the busiest and most exciting seasons of the year. 4 great in-house shows, youth shows, and Arts Council funded new work with a pro-am cast and a director of renown. But as usual, I jump ahead of myself to the main course. The spring, the starter of the Sterts Banquet 2019, saw the one-act play finale in its new slot. The success of the competition was making the judging process something of a sprint, and we felt that we needed more time to judge, which in turn led to casting and rehearsals being squeezed if it stayed. The competition is a great success, and we are seeing a growing entry, including young writers for whom there was a special award in 2019. Our youth group, SYTC, presented a short play evening with 2 titles, DNA and It Snows. These titles were National Theatre Connections plays from 2018, and the intention was to try them out with a view to give the opportunity to perform an SYTC entry in 2020. NT Connections is a national theatre competition for older teenagers where they get an opportunity to perform the show at least twice in their own venue and in the Theatre Royal in Plymouth. And a few are invited to perform for a 3rd time at the National Theatre in London. The spring season also saw performances by the Devonians and the ever-popular Warwick and Davy. I have to say that. We held our first beer festival, imaginatively entitled The Taming of the Brew. We were unsure of how much interest there would be, but the event was a great success and enjoyed by many, including a number of locals for whom it was their first visit to Sterts. May half-term week also saw the first production from a new group, SYTCJ, a youth group for 7 to 14-year-olds, and they staged a spectacular production of Disney's Aladdin that included a real flying carpet. However, the spring was also notable for the number of rehearsals and preparatory sessions that we had for our exciting summer season to come. The season opened with a black comedy, The Woman Who Cooked Her Husband, in the studio. This was directed by Hattie Elias-Jones, a performing arts lecturer from City College in Plymouth. The studio show was a great success with close to sell-out audiences and super feedback. Fantastic Mr. Fox was directed by Sam Pomeroy, a Plymouth-based professional director and familiar face around Sterts. The music was looked after by Elfyn Jones, new to Sterts but well-known musical director and music educator. The show proved particularly popular with our primary schools. The musical was a review of musical numbers based loosely around the theme of a railway station entitled West End to Broadway. This was directed by Nathan Pavey, who had done such a great job with the History Boys in 2018, and the music was looked after by Sterts stalwart and local music teacher Jane Warwick. The plays were And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, directed by Harry Pearce, a teacher from North Cornwall, and the comedy was A Bunch of Amateurs by Ian Hislop. This was directed by Oksana Roth, local theatre practitioner and director who is very familiar to Sterts audiences. Mark Sidey did a splendid job of coordinating these in his role as festival director. He also performed in 2 of the shows and directed Aladdin, a busy summer. The whole season was sponsored by Puckator, with whom we have a productive and beneficial relationship. We are most grateful to Caroline and Mark Howard for their ongoing support. By the end of the season, Fantastic Mr. Fox had achieved target sales figures. However, what was disappointing was that none of the other shows achieved their targets, despite being very good productions. We had strong positive feedback from audience members, but this simply failed to translate into sales. Then there were none got close to its target, 10% under. West End to Broadway was 28% under, and a bunch of amateurs was catastrophically 48% down on estimated sales. Overall, the 4 in-house shows returned a deficit equivalent to some £3,000 to £4,000, which Graham's already mentioned in his report. The visiting shows were better supported, and although there was a small drop in profit, it was within 5% plus or minus, that is our usual rate, although the end of the season tailed off badly for a variety of reasons. Season highlights included a new visiting band, The Zoots, who were really good. Tribute band Magic of the Bee Gees were very popular. And our new departure, Film Nights, was a great success, with the sing-along The Greatest Showman being a huge hit. Long-standing favourites like Illyria and Miracle did well. Illyria produced a brave reimagining of the Frankenstein story that became the talking point of the Cornish theatre scene, with one venue manager contacting me in advance to warn of extremely adverse audience reaction. It was controversial. There was a little disquiet amongst the Sterts audience, but we're made of sterner stuff. I enjoyed it, and I'm a firm believer in the power of theatre to challenge as well as entertain, so I was happy to see this and praise the director for his work. The regular early season festivals are both well-established features of our calendar. Bodmin Moor Poetry Festival split into 2 for 2019, and Midsummer Night featured performers of exceptional quality. Both are making Sterts' name better known to new audiences. The Shearing Gang was an ambitious new piece of writing that was generously funded by the Arts Council. It was a co-production with Dogwood Productions and featured a core of professional actors and theatre makers with a supporting cast from Sterts. It was particularly ambitious in that it also involved 2 West Cornwall venues, Penley Park in Penzance and Treva Gardens in Falmouth, as hosts after it had been played at Sterts. With that wonderful quality of hindsight, it is now clear we were taking on too much with a full summer season and the Shearing Gang as an extra. It was too big to comfortably fit within the Sterts administrative load, and the co-producer had a very different approach to budgetary restraint. This could have been overcome, but unfortunately a series of events conspired to make the project an expensive disappointment. For many of the participants from Sterts, it was an exciting and enjoyable experience. Regrettably, the audience did not agree, and it failed at the box office, losing many thousands of pounds. It is not appropriate to go into detail here. The Sterts trustees have discussed this at length, and lessons have been learned. We were grateful for support from the Sterts acting community, many of whom stepped into roles at Falmouth and Penzance, and to the wider Sterts community that managed to source props, ranging from scrap cars to live sheep. The autumn 2019 season had 2 outstanding theatre events among a generally successful studio season. We had full houses for the Camp Theatre play A Woman in Mind, and Squashbox Theatre sold the studio out with Spooky Tales in half-term week and the Christmassy Christmas show in December. The play Bronte from the Devonians and singer-songwriter Sarah McQuaid did well. The Christmas craft fair goes from strength to strength, and we may well need to spread it out in 2020 to accommodate all the stallholders. The 2 outstanding theatre events were the SYTC production of the Madness musical Our House, which showed just how good that group of young people really are, and No Walls from Plymouth staged Sleeping Beauty, a pantomime, in the theatre, in December, and it was a great success. In the Hall Gallery, Helen Skidmore, a local artist, programmed a series of exhibitions in the first part of the year, and we are grateful to her for this contribution. After the summer, the gallery hosted an interactive exhibition by Molly Tufnell, a local textile artist who spent some time in the gallery creating for visitors to come and see her at work, as well as leading creative workshops. I'm nearly finished. In-house publicity has again been produced by the office team. The brochure was restyled into early and late summer editions in order for it to remain fresh and new looking. It continues to be a major source of ticket sales despite the growth of a variety of online sources. Ruth Wilkes had completed her tenure on the Rio Cultivator Scheme, a funded job creation programme focused on young adults trying to improve their employability, and had been employed to run the publicity and online elements of Sterts. She worked tirelessly through the summer and had a major positive impact. She worked with Jodie Ronaldson, who was employed through the Rio Cultivator Scheme for 6 months to be an administrator of the shearing gang, and between them they gave Sterts a fresh and youthful look. Both have now left Sterts, although we are keen to employ them as freelance creative contributors should such opportunities arise. The relationship with Cornwall Council has continued to be fruitful. Our arts client status is confirmed until 2022. Last year I was reporting that the Council had regretfully reduced Sterts' annual grant. On a much happier note, I can report that last autumn Cornwall gave Sterts a grant of £15,000 for the development of our box office using the redundant cricket pavilion from Loo as the basic structure. This was due to start in the autumn but was deferred to spring 2020 because of bad weather. The rest, they say, is history, but we'll come to that next year. The administration was being run by Lisa Townsend until the autumn. Lisa decided she wanted to concentrate on developing her own business and left in November with our very best wishes. We have now recruited Sarah Curley, who has experience working with charities in Scotland and has relocated to Cornwall recently. Although retired, Robin Lawrence has continued to look after the IT, and his availability to answer panic-stricken calls about IT is most welcome. And I really haven't just added that, we have had to phone him this evening. The development of volunteers continues to be a priority. We introduced an online fire training programme last year, and that worked well, so we will be extending this training when we can. Ruth Wilkes was volunteer liaison for most of the year and covered in this report and was very effective. It is the nature of these reports that current events do not get mentioned. I am sure, absolutely sure, that COVID-19 will feature in next year's report. Looking through our objectives that are the preamble to this report, there is an impact on each one of them, and we will have to consider this. As you may well imagine, the impact on Sterts has been dramatic. We normally like a drama, but could have done without this drama. Like the rest of the theatre sector and the rest of the country, we cannot wait to get back to normal. Finally, as always, there are a number of people named in this report who contribute greatly to Sterts. There are an awful lot more who are unnamed, and our gratitude and appreciation are due to them all. Any questions? Good, quick, get up there for it.
And one of those people that needs the thanks is, of course, Peter. And not only for 2019, but for the slightly horrible 5 months we've had since then. So, okay. Right. A piece of formal business, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, when I stood here, I talked about how, as trustees, we had been discussing the transfer of Sterts from an unincorporated charity to an incorporated charity. The CIO, Charitable Incorporated Organisation, is a better format for Sterts. It will enable us, as I said last year, to get us more grants, or at least get us access to more grants. No grants are ever granted, for sure. It gives us a strong legal framework. The unincorporated charity is flimsy. However, as you might imagine, you would think we could go to the Charity Commission and say, we're a thriving charity, we'd like to move to incorporated status. No. Sally Dalton has worked like a Trojan throughout 2019, putting together the application for a brand new charity called Sterts Arts and Environmental Centre, which is a mirror of the organisation that we operate presently. I am delighted to say that all her hard work paid off, and that incorporated charity has been granted. So currently, if you look at the Charity Commission, there are 2 Sterts Arts and Environmental Centres. One is simply a shell, obviously there's nothing there yet. The 2 pieces of voting that were put out were to enable us to transfer the assets from the current charity to the new one. Like I say, it's not a simple routine. We can't just say one shut, one open. We have to now, having got the new charity, have to formally apply to transfer the assets. So the 2 motions that have been put forward is to effectively dissolve the existing charity. However, before we do that, we need to transfer all the assets and liabilities to the new charity. So the motion that you have been kindly voting on, and thank you for those who have responded already, is to do those 2 things. Transfer all the assets from old charity to new charity, and then dissolve the old charity. There will be no visible difference apart from our headed notepaper will now have the Queen's Award for Volunteer Service sign on it and a different registered charity number. That, as far as anybody is concerned, is all that will be seen. But as I say, it does give us a better legal framework. Now, recognising that we have had to put that online, we have asked that people vote in advance of the AGM so that we can effectively say during the AGM the vote was counted. However, we recognise that this explanation might actually make some of it a little clearer, or maybe not, who knows. And therefore, if you'd like to continue to vote overnight, if you get your voting papers in tomorrow, by the time we write the minutes of the AGM, we will have a clear quorum. I believe, how many people did you say are online at present?
48.
Right, and we've had,
Doesn't it?
yeah, so we do need some more votes from paid up members. Okay, so anybody who is a bona fide member of Sterts, so that's cast, people who pay, it doesn't count volunteers unless you pay a membership fee. Anybody who is in Sterts Singers, Sterts Youth if you're over 18, any of those can vote. I think it's 18 in the Constitution.
The old Constitution,
Yeah,
the new
yeah.
Constitution will be 16.
It will be, yes, but the old one is 18. So if anybody has any questions on that, I will be happy to answer them. However, I'm hoping, as I say, we are not making this complex. The Charity Commission have done that for us. Nothing coming up in terms...
On YouTube.
Good. Right. Obviously, email me, chair@stertsarts.org if there is anything you need answering. So, okay, thank you. Just a quick review of the actions that we took last year, just to give you a heads up in case you hadn't noticed that they had been done. We changed the ticketing and implemented no concessionary tickets. That resulted in quite a lot of silence. We had very little feedback and very little that was negative. We changed membership rates, which came into force this year and the latter part of last year. Again, resounding nothing, really. I should remind people that if you have multiple children in Sterts Youth, there is a discount for a family, and also we do offer bursaries. So if you can't afford to do what you would love to do at Sterts, tell us, and we will endeavour to pay the fees for you. Thanks to Bernice, Ruth, and many others, the cafe income was not as dire as we feared because we didn't have anybody running it. In fact, those ladies did sterling work, and we had a reasonable income from the cafe last year. The 100 Hundreds and the other fundraising, the 100 Club, etc., did help. I have to say that money that we raised that was supposed to go towards the Pavilion Fund is still in that bucket, ready for when we start putting the pavilion up. We haven't liberated it to try and get us through because it is restricted funding. So you raised it for a reason, we will use it for that reason. So, we had some plans for 2020. And then some wretched pandemic came and thumped us. So, as I look around this room, boy, does that tell us that we've got a pandemic on. So, we did start our community hub activities. This was part of our aim, was to broaden our reach, do something a bit different, make use of the wonderful facilities and assets we have. We had plans for events supporting health and well-being, a memory cafe, a men's shed, a repair cafe, Pilates, yoga, workshops, women's groups. Some of those started, some of those are regrettably on hold. We were even looking at potential for a farmer's market. I mean, boy, is that ground ready, for exactly that. Peter and Andrew were putting together bids to enable summer activities for disadvantaged children on site, children who perhaps couldn't necessarily access school clubs. Again, all on hold. COVID has taken the funding. It's obviously also taken the ability to provide some of those. We had applications into the National Lottery Community Fund, Cornwall Council and many others. Big thanks to Andrew Mullen and Peter because they worked very hard on starting to make that happen. I'm hoping it is just a pause button. Obviously, Peter has just mentioned that we had hoped to get the pavilion up to host the office, team and reception. We have the grant. Again, that is held because it is restricted funding, and as and when we can operate, we will get that going. We took an action to look at potentially pop-up food offerings. Again, Bernice worked her socks off, and we actually had extensive bookings associated with various shows throughout the summer. Yeah, obviously that's not happening. Fundraising for other major works like the roofs, the toilets, the office space, the cafe structure, the outbuildings, that still is continuing sort of in a gentle way, a sort of trickle perhaps rather than a full stream. We will get back to all of that as soon as is humanly possible. Our strategic aims really are to do more for our community. And I mean, our community is the Sterts family and where we are. We want to still try and create more paid jobs here. The volunteers, did anybody tell you we got the Queen's Award for voluntary service? The volunteers are wonderful, but it would be great if we were thriving such that we could actually employ more people. We want to increase our outreach, and that is not just about doing things that appeal to a broader audience, but also part of something I'll come to in a minute, which is what I'm dubbing Sterts on Tour. And broadening our offering. So in other words, things like the community hub, not just being a theatre and an arts centre, but being a thriving hub for our community. I hope that in the not too distant future we will be able to do all of that. And finally, it's always got to be a bit of good news, and in this case it's cracking news. We've been made or given the Queen's Award for voluntary service. However, additionally, we have been given an Arts Council England grant to help us through COVID-19. Thanks to Peter for putting this together. It is designed to support income in 2020. It is designed to help us put together some late summer performances, maybe films, maybe in-house performances, who knows what, but done in a safe, healthy, sanitizer-full way. The Arts Council funding is offering up the money to be able to have a far lower audience, to one-way the system, to rent Portaloos, to flood the place with hand sanitizer. However, it will depend upon Cornwall Council support, and that meeting is tomorrow. So at the moment we can't give you the full lowdown on what the plan will be. We are an outdoor centre, therefore theoretically we can get that plan going. The other element of the funding is to help us do autumn performances in other venues. We recognise that you freeze bits you didn't know you had in autumn performances in our theatre if they're long shows. So we're going to look around about us and go to other halls. Perhaps do something in conference centres, anywhere that we could potentially be indoors and take our wonderful Sterts Theatre Company on tour. There are obviously costs associated with that, renting places, which we would never normally do, and that's part of what the Arts Council grant is about. It will all be subject to latest government regulation. We will do nothing that puts our people and our guests at risk. However, as a charity, we sincerely hope we can come out of this. We sincerely hope we can give the performances that people love to see. And that is the end of the good news. But two pieces of good news. Great stuff. And just well done to all our volunteers. Thank you all. Right, so any questions?
Only from your sister asking if she can have a job.
They probably didn't hear that, you maybe do.
Yeah, okay, so the only question that has arisen has come from my dear baby sister, who has asked if she could have one of the jobs. So I shall answer that in private and probably in Anglo-Saxon later. So thanks for everyone that's been supporting us through these hard times. It is most appreciated. Thank you to all the trustees that have been helping us with all the work that's needed. Thank you to Peter and Sarah. Thank you, Graham, Claire, Anne, Colin, Jamie, Ruth, and Interloper, who happens to be my husband. So.
Oh, a question from Linda Croft. How much is the grant worth?
21,000. Sorry, the question is how much is the grant from the Arts Council? It's £21,600.
No more? Right, well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, we will sign off. I think we'll sign off.